Will do.
Just go to the flight mode.
Okay, we're in slideshow mode now. The title
Yes,
of our
we are.
presentation is that okay now?
That's okay now, Steve. Go ahead.
Okay, the title is Engaging Youth in Private Sector Agricultural Extension and Advisory Services, Lessons from Rwanda and Uganda. And the co-authors are myself, Kristen Davis, Richard Miro, Rafael Ruangwa, Beatrice Luzobe, and Nicholas Uitonze. Well, in Africa south of the Sahara, we're in rural areas to absorb new entrants. That's FAO data, and the numbers probably increased by now since that was from 2016. But rural youth face a lot of constraints in getting jobs and getting work, limited education, lack of assets, land, cash, negative perceptions towards agriculture that they have, and many adults also have negative perceptions towards youth. So in spite of all these constraints, there are many initiatives that are actually achieving quite a bit of success in terms of engaging youth in agriculture and in extension and advisory services. And by extension and advisory services, I just wanted to point out that we mean all the activities from a wide range of actors, not just government, to provide diverse information, inputs, and services, not just about fertilizer and productivity to farmers. So we're talking about the new EAS, the new extension and advisory services, a broad range of actors, a broad range of inputs and services, and a broad range of objectives. Knowledge is still emerging about how to engage youth in EAS. We researchers and policymakers still don't know a lot. So what we wanted to do was really try to bring to light some of the really exciting innovations going on from the field. This is extension and advisory services because of the rapid growth of commercial agriculture, because of greater policy emphasis on private market mechanisms and private sector's potential for providing sustainable EAS. So our objectives are assess how private sector extension advisory services engage youth and the potential for greater engagement, and describe models of youth engagement in extension and advisory services involving youth as both providers and recipients. So when we talk about extension and advisory services here, we're talking about providers of extension, where youth become providers of extension, but we're also talking about them as recipients of extension. So when we talk about increasing engagement, it's both as providers, for example, companies hiring youths as extension agents, or as recipients, as when trainees get trained in, let's say, entrepreneurship or business. So we're talking about for-profit private sector actors, we're talking about public-private partnerships, and we're talking about actions of government projects, NGOs, to promote entrepreneurship, and in that way promote the private sector. So we'll be describing these models, we'll be assessing model performance and factors affecting performance, although we have to say right out that there isn't much data. And we'll be making some recommendations on how to facilitate promising models. The methods, well, the methods were we interviewed with 37 implementers, and by implementers we mean organizations that are implementing youth and EAS initiatives, organizations and also companies that are employing and engaging youth. And in 1/3 of the cases, we also visited participating youth and field staff in the initiatives that we were working on. We also interviewed policymakers because of their importance in framing the context in which all of this happens. Okay, thanks. So that's the introduction and methods. I'd like to turn over to my colleague, Richard Miro, for the findings. Thank you.
Okay, Richard, the floor is yours.
Hi everyone, it's good afternoon over here, and hello.
Hello, go ahead. We can hear you.
So I'm sharing the findings of this study, and I just want to start by pointing out that we also appreciated the government policies concerning youth engagement in private sector extension. And in both of the countries, that is Rwanda, we saw a number of instruments that were providing guidance for youth engagement in private sector extension, specifically the strategy for agriculture extension, a national youth policy, and also an emphasis for pluralistic extension, which gives also the Vision 2040 looks at having a private sector-led and market-oriented economy. Again, it had a very clear agriculture extension policy that provided for multiple players and a specific strategy for youth employment in agriculture. So in both of the countries, there was an enabling environment for these youth engagement to survive. And now to the models of youth engagement in private sector extension. As Steve shared, we had up to about 37 cases or organizations visited, 20 in Uganda and 19 in Rwanda. And I'll be going through specifics of them as we move on. So there were several models, 1 up to 7, and I'm going to go through each one of them. The first model was training youth to become entrepreneurs. This one involved, for example, what we found, what they had as the agribusiness incubation hub. This one trains the Natchez University students to have successful business enterprises. About 100 students had registered and 20 had enterprises at various levels and by 6 people. The second one was again based at a university, Makerere University, my university where I work. It's called, the institute is called African Institute for Strategic Animal Resource Services and Development. Through its skills for production, enterprise development, and accreditation, SPEDA, it offers artisan certificates and other certificates, both at university and community level. And at the end of it all, youth graduate with a viable enterprise. And so there were a number of value chains, as you see below, that they were engaged with. In Rwanda, again, among those who were training youth to become entrepreneurs, we had the Get Trained, Let's Work, Uguka Tukore project. Here, this focused on out of youth, school youths, giving them entrepreneurship training and coaching. It also integrated a holistic approach where they make sure these youth become self or wage employed. We had 22 implementing partners involved in this project, a third of which were focused on agribusiness. A specific example under this was the Day Limited, a company that was encouraging mushroom production and processing in Rwanda. It had trained up to 621 youth to become mushroom producers, fitting well for the youth who usually lack land and giving them a chance to also make some money. So in the process, they had 37 extension staff, mainly women, and these extension staff had to be paid by the mushroom growers. And also this company provided inputs and bought off the mushrooms. What we noticed from this training youth to become entrepreneurs is that there were several services, including a needs assessment, a mindset change training, foundational training, technical training, and coaching, among others. And I want us to appreciate here some of the numbers, because we're interested in finding out the level of involving youth as staff or youth as beneficiaries. So for Uganda, we have 6 cases that we looked at, and I don't have to mention their names, but at least they had They were working on varied enterprises, including one in cagefish farming and another one in silage making. If you notice, we had a reach of up to percentage of the young staff. You could see most of them almost were employing youth. And when it came to gender, again, we saw some level of involvement of female youth extension staff. And again, in terms of the numbers of young people reached, we see, especially in Uganda, Enterprise Uganda, being able to reach almost up to 40,000 youth under this training youth to become entrepreneurs. And even others had good numbers, except for a few. In Rwanda, we had also a breakdown here. We visited we had three cases for that matter. And if you also see, most of them are using youth as service providers. The level of involving women is also equally good. You can see between 50 and 72. And then we see, again, a good reach. Again, Huguka Tukore had reached almost up to 40,000 young people. And if you notice again to the extreme right, between 50 to 70% of these reached people were female. A second model here we share is the village agent model. This type of model involved specific duties for the village agent, specifically to inform farmers through their farm organizations and groups about the products the company had, and to take orders from the farmers depending on the needs that they had. If the village agent could also deliver inputs to farmers, assisted in demonstrations as well as in the bulking and purchasing of farmers' produce. In this model also, the village agents could profile the farms using phone-based applications, for example, to get the farmers area under cultivation so that they can be able to estimate the inputs to order for and the estimated yields. Again, these village agents linked farmers to other services like extension, credit insurance, and even to hiring machinery that are needed at the farm. In Uganda, we had 5 cases specific with the village agent model. And as you notice, a number of them were depending on donor funding to work, except one called Famnera, who received funding from an investor. And for that matter, for them, making profits and being able to meet the investor requirements became very important. Again, we see that 2 of these organizations using the village agent model also operated an advisory call center where farmers could, in case of need for advice. In Rwanda, we had 2 cases here, and again, for them, they had no donor funding. Essentially, they were trying to operate as private sector strictly. We see that almost 90% of the agents were youth, and 45% on average were female youth in the service. Echene, which was an organization also operating this model, at least had an attachment to an input subsidy program of the government of Rwanda. And in this program, there was a link provided by the Bank of Kigali to provide a service for farmers to be able to pay, that is a mobile-based, to pay for services and or cash if they don't have access to the link. When it comes to the rewards, the village agent model in particular, for 3 of the cases we look at, for example, Emom Limsa, in a year, the agent would earn around $160. For Zabta, a organization also, Emom Limsa is a tech company, while Zabta was the farm organization. There, the agent would earn about $500 a year. Eshene in Rwanda, the agent would earn about $250 in a year. There were some concerns about this village agent model, specifically the fact that in Uganda, for example, the proportion of women in the village agent activities were fewer. And there was also dissatisfaction with their inability to advise on technical issues like agronomy and so on, which the farmers often needed. In case, would on the side engage in selling fake inputs, and that would compromise the name of the company. Our third model focuses on youth-led and other fee-based extension providers. This one, we had young agriculturalists who started several private extension services. 5 of them in Rwanda and 1 in Uganda. But there were also 2 other agencies that were not run by youth, but employed the youth. In Rwanda, we start with the first 4, which were owned by the youth. These ones were focusing on horticulture as well as other varied crops. If you notice, they also had unique services beyond extension. For example, irrigation support. And again, if you notice, one of them, AgriWin in Rwanda, was reaching, the youth here were reaching culture service AgriWin was offering. Horeco, which is also focused on horticulture, for it to had managed to be able to secure big contracts with government almost across serious areas, districts in Rwanda, and also was able to get serious grants with Agra and World Bank for them to provide services for the farmers. Again, if you notice in terms of numbers, here in Rwanda, see almost 90% of these people were young people, were young extension staff, and about, we can say there on average about 30% of them were women. And again, we see Horeco, which reached the highest, getting almost up to 40,000. So we can talk about really these models being able to reach many, many youth. For this, again, model of youth-led fee-based extension providers, in Uganda, we had 2 cases. One, Marula, where my colleague Bobby, or my friend Bobby, is the CEO. Two ones, Marula was youth-led, and while Excel Hot was not youth-led. And what we noticed again, that Excel Hot was reaching large-scale farmers who should be able, who are able to pay for the service. And we see again in both cases the percentage of course, all of them were youth extension staff, but the percentage of female was between 35 and 47%. While the reach, of course, varied. With Marula, they are reaching 400 beneficiaries. We talked about the other fee-based extension providers, one of which was EcoHot, which I've just finished sharing with you. But now I'll share with you one from Rwanda called Holland Green Tech. This one was engaged in providing a service to, again, farmers who could invest in greenhouses, and they also had services for soil testing and irrigation. But they also had a donor involved as paying for that service, as well as some farmers who purchased technology, and then the extension service was free because of the technology purchased. Holland Green was also reaching people. The percentage of youth that were involved or reached were 40%. Sorry, the percentage of youth that were in the service of extension were 40%, while 600 farmers had been reached in that effort. Our fourth model is about the paraprofessional extension workers. Here we defined a paraprofessional as a person who has completed a short course to conduct professional duties, but without a formal qualification, let's say from a university. A case in point is the Uganda National Peer Development Organization, UNADO. It had a process which started off by advertising for applicants, young applicants for that matter, then lead them through a training that would lead them into a business, their own business, and for which they would get mentorship and coaching. And at the end of the day, they would become beekeeping extension providers, but also entrepreneurs in their own right. So these paraprofessionals, NADO gave them a name. The name was, they were drones. These drones had reached up to, NADO had raised up to 150 drones, providing a service and being entrepreneurs themselves. And of course, 25% of these, not of course, but 25% of these were female, and the beneficiaries they had reached were up to 1,500. Our fifth model is about credit and financial services for the youth. And our first case was from the Centenary Bank, which again partnered with Swiss Contact, an international NGO from Switzerland. They were supporting local skill development for the youth, targeting poor, out of reach, out of school youth as well. This partnership provided holistic approach to training. That is, besides the financial and the entrepreneurial or agronomy training, they provided other life skills, again, making sure that their trainee is prepared for work. These youth then started businesses that were financed by the bank, and beneficiaries also opened bank accounts that could be accessible with mobile banking. In terms of the outcomes of this effort, 4,000 youth benefited from the initial training by Swiss Contact to prepare them to receive loans. Only 1,650 were able to access loans, 40% female, and 40% of these 1,600 got loans in agriculture. We were told that the recovery rate from the entire effort was 95%, which was good. But the reason was that the 1,600 were really that were regarded as serious and therefore could ensure recovery of the loans received. A second case, again, in this credit and financial services model was the Mbarara District Local Government in Uganda. By the previous case also was in Uganda, forgive me for that. And this one also was the Government of Uganda Youth Livelihood Program and the Ministry of Gender and Labour Social Development. The objective there was to empower youth to operate self-employment businesses, and the loans were given to groups of 5 to 15 youth who had a viable business idea. Local government committee elections, and between us 2017 and 2019, one groups have received loans, and 43% of these were female. Of course, 43% of the 1,000 youths in the 100 groups were female. The loans averaged $2,400 with an interest for the first year and 5% for the time, which again would encourage youth to be able to benefit. This effort saw up to 33% of the loans in agricultural enterprises. And again, when we look at the results, these were mixed. To accept means 60% were not. Those that were successful mainly fell into the transport and trade businesses. For us agriculturalists, we didn't fare very well in the youth livelihood program, with most livestock and crop production enterprises failing to recover or to pay back. Reasons were given as the youth groups were weak and there was no follow-up by extension staff arranged. Our sixth model concerns internships. These internships were mainly in Rwanda. And we found out that the Rwanda Development Board had organized internship programs for university graduates. And in a specific USAID project, 263 internships benefited from these agribusiness connections. And of these, 75% were women. And we want to applaud this internship for reaching the women. We must appreciate that this effort also involved a lot of partnerships and collaboration. And one of the collaborators in this effort was the Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum. Working together with the Ministry of Agriculture and Minagri, they could place students and also provide preparatory training. The host organizations gave some allowances like transport. The interns could do a lot of work, including extension. And between 2017 and 19, RIAF was able to place 1,500 youth. That is an incredible number of youth getting opportunity to serve, and many of them in extension. The other internship was again in Kepler University in Rwanda, working together with One Acre Fund, a high proportion of whom were involved in extension services. Since the program started in 2017, up to 16 interns had been placed. Again, another good score of 60% of these being women. For them, at least a payment of $160 was offered to the interns. Our last model is the Youth Entrepreneurship Awards model. This was in Uganda, and in partnership with the Food Agriculture Organization and the Ministry of Agriculture and Industry and Fisheries, they launched the Uganda Youth Program. It rewarded young people who had cutting-edge innovations in agricultural value chains, inspiring with the intention of inspiring other youth to work in agriculture. And they targeted 14 to 35 years of age. 25 winners were identified out of 5 applications. Winners were celebrated in local media, so given national and international exposure visas, as well as a 1-week training in agribusiness. In addition, they also got between $300 and $900 to invest in their enterprises. Some of them were also deployed to support other youth, providing advice and training. And this effort also involved local government and extension workers to link these privileged or at least celebrated youth to other youth initiatives. When we looked at this Youth Champion program, we saw 4 key contributions to promoting youth in agriculture. One of them was recognition. These 25 people had their profile raised a great deal, especially among their peers and communities and country at large. Secondly, there was a lot of connectivity as their social networks and links, regional, national, international, improved. There was a lot of learning for these beneficiaries from the trainings and from the opportunities that they were exposed to, as well as a change of attitude where they observed that at least the nation was now recognizing that there were many hardworking youth, and youth can benefit in careers in agriculture. We, as Steve mentioned, also now assist the performance of these models. Focusing, the approach was qualitative because we didn't go for hard data. And of the 7 models, as I've presented them, we see a reach, at least with the finance, into thousands of youth benefiting per year as entrepreneurs, also reaching thousands, almost 10,000 of beneficiaries. We see a good reach of women across all these models, not all, especially the highest being there training youth to become entrepreneurs. I mean, internships, forgive me, internships. And the list was the paraprofessionals. And in terms of financial sustainability, we see the village agent law and the youth-led based services scoring high, as well as the internships when it came to financial sustainability. Basically, we were looking at the investment made by the organization or by the project per trainee and how much the results reflected. Then when it came to stability, we see also high scores between the village agent model, the based model, and training youth to be entrepreneurs. They were really scalable and we can borrow a leaf from them. The others had medium scalability, but please, those of us who are good at very perfect scores, these are qualitative measures. They could improve with the more robust type of research. As I end, I want also for us to appreciate some of the factors that were affecting youth engagement in these models. The first one was education. We see that in at least 6 of the models, the target of who should participate. Remember that we have a concern of the youth who have not had as much education as others, especially those in primary school or who stopped at primary school level. Nevertheless, we see at least 3 of these models being able to open a door. Incentives were also important because, as you can see, private sector youth engagement models only work effectively if the companies promoting them see an incentive in engaging the youth and the youth themselves see an incentive in being involved. For the village agent model, earning cash from commissions was a big motivation. Other motivations, of course, included the social status of village agents improving, some of them starting their own businesses, and also including yes, one is incentives for the company, gender. We have an issue there that we need to see more space for women. We need.
Richard, we've lost you. Richard? It seems like we've lost Richard as he was concluding. Steve, are you still with us?
Yes.
Okay, maybe we can proceed on to you. I think based on that presentation, there were recommendations.
Into the recommendations.
Yes, please go ahead.
I think
okay, let me proceed. Yeah.
I've finished. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. I'll move to the recommendations now. And the first one really is recognizing the richness, diversity, and high potential of extension and advisory services.
Steve, I kindly request you to be on the slide mode.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
The first one is recognizing the richness, diversity, and high potential of extension and advisory services. Extension advisory services have a often not recognized role of integrating efforts of diverse partners in providing diverse services. And this can operate very effectively at the local level, regional level, and even national level. It's a bridging role that EAS serves that needs to be given more emphasis. Another recommendation is dedicating resources for conducting youth assessments, project planning. In many of the programs we visited, it appeared that they were involved in youth almost as an afterthought. People running around saying, how do we involve youth? And it appeared that there hadn't been enough really careful assessments at the initial stage of project planning. And it's at this stage that you really have to go out and find out what youth's aspirations are, their needs and constraints, and then set up your targets and monitor them for achieving specific levels of youth inclusion. Understanding heterogeneity of youth, and in particular helping young women, is critical. There was this tendency to think of youth as almost a homogeneous group. Yes, we have a project. Yes, we're helping youth. We have interns, for example. And of course, interns, at least in the programs we visited, were almost always university graduates that make up a very small percentage of total youth in the population. There really is a recognition, really is a need for understanding that, you know, youth vary quite a bit in their circumstances, and identifying different youth segments and then tailoring programs to meet their context. Giving greater emphasis to helping poor rural youth with low education levels, that means like high school or less, should be a key priority of many projects. It doesn't mean, you know, we're not saying drop the projects for university graduates, but we have to give greater emphasis to poor rural youth. Helping young women is a key aspect of understanding this heterogeneity also, because we know so often that if we not focusing on gender, only young males may benefit. We need to get out and be very proactive about increasing the proportion of women who are benefiting. Example is if you're conducting a training and advertising it so it's for everyone, you know, you may end up with mostly males or all males attending. You have to be proactive and go out to local leaders, local female leaders, opinion leaders, and specifically invite women to participate. Another point is that data on youth need to be broken down by gender to show how many young women are benefiting. So we see data, for example, that X% are youth. And then there's also data that X% are women. But what we really need is among the youth that are participating, what percentage are women? That was a missing data point in many studies. Among the youth that are participating, what percentage are female? Strengthen policy support for young engagement. Well, one thing we noticed, we noticed that Rwanda and Uganda were both very strong supporters, as Richard said, of youth engagements. But it was interesting that they had different policies. And what I want to present to you is policies that Rwanda has that Uganda doesn't, and policies that Uganda has that Rwanda doesn't. And not propose that each one has to adopt the other, but at least consider the other's policies and the potential for adoption in the respective countries. Rwanda streamlined regulations to make it easier to start and operate businesses. So we find, for example, that on ease of doing business, Rwanda ranks 38th globally. This is World Bank data. Uganda 116th. So streamlining regulations to make it easier to start and operate a business can help youth in terms of starting businesses. And it was no coincidence that we seem to find a lot more youth-owned businesses in extension in Rwanda than we did in Uganda. And the issues here are the administrative aspects of starting a business, enforcing contracts, a whole range of things, even things like getting how easy it is to get electricity for your office. Rwanda also has tax exemptions for small businesses and for youth businesses. Reduced airtime rates for rural businesses. We were surprised to find that, at least I hadn't seen it before. And inclusion of private sector staff in extension advisory system planning and training was also a very interesting characteristic of Rwanda. That is, if you go to the local level, you find that private sector extension staff attending the government planning meetings, the training meetings, because they're part of the extension and advisory services in the area, even though they're not associated, they don't have a direct connection with government extension. Some policies that Uganda has: a national strategy for youth employment in agriculture. Okay, and this strategy has driven a lot of, as Richard was saying, the strategy was very important in catalyzing youth engagement in Uganda. Uganda also has a Department of Agricultural Extension in a national university that, of course, is important for training youth in extension, which Rwanda doesn't have. But even on top of that, it also serves, this department, as a center for policy analysis in extension and expertise. And last day, registration of all EAS providers to improve coordination. This is a plan that Uganda has. Integrating services to help youth develop businesses is also a recommendation. That one thing we found that in some cases, a particular aspect of helping youth develop businesses was being implemented without looking at other aspects that were important. And an example is a training program, for example. Training is great, but it has to be linked to other things. And examples are foundational training, which means financial literacy, and gender, other aspects of training. Access to financial services. If you're training in business, it's important that the people receiving the training have access to financial services, getting loans, savings and loans associations. And coaching, also important. After the training, what happens? Coaching is needed. So I present over here on the right the Youth Options Pathway model of the Educational Development Center working in Rwanda. That tries to capture all of these different aspects that are needed to achieve at the bottom self-employment and wage employment. Evaluating digital tools. It was great to hear, as Richard told us, about the emphasis on testing on the new digital tools in extension and advisory services, and this emphasis needs to be testing. Call centers, videos are high priority. And subsidies for developing and adopting these tools are justified. That is, donor agencies. It's very important that they get involved also in helping finance some of these things because they're expensive and they're risky. And some of them may not work. They'll need adaptation. But subsidies are justified as long as there's a clear business plan and a timeline for phasing them out. Conducting impact assessments. One thing we were also a bit surprised about was that we didn't find any rigorous impact assessments that have been conducted on these reviewed models. Such assessments are urgently needed to not only to assess effectiveness, but also to learn how to improve effectiveness. That is, how can we tweak these models in order to improve them? And just a couple of high priority topics are our programs training youth to become agripreneurs effective. That is, a training is done and often there's very little follow-up or evaluation to find out what happened after the training. For such programs, what types of training? For how long should training take place? What supplementary services are required? That coaching, for example. And another topic concerns village agents. Will costs of making a village agent an extension agent pay for itself and increase sales? We found various different models of village agents where they were being given in some cases, they were given very little training and extension. They were just providing some basic information about the inputs they were selling. In other cases, they were trained in extension and were providing other services like showing videos and managing SMS system for gaining answers to questions, and there was backstopping by a call center. So finding out the different ways that village agents can be integrated into extension is also a very important topic. I want to go over some recommendations specific to particular models that Richard brought out. Number one is training youth to become entrepreneurs. Here, impact assessments over periods of more than 1 year are needed. We saw in evaluations, some of the evaluations dealing with, just a few months after, but it needs a longer period. On village agents, we already talked about testing the digital tools to find out which modifications are most effective and inclusive also. 3, youth-led and other fee-based extension providers. A key aspect here is reducing the cost of starting and operating a new business. Internships, expanding internship programs to high school and vocational school graduates. It seemed like in that almost all the internship programs we saw were exclusively for university students. Paraprofessional extension workers, proactive measures to increase the employment of young women as paraprofessionals. Again, these were cases where no proactive measures were being taken when these positions are advertised, and it ended up that almost all positions were taken by males. Credit and financial services, it's important that funds be channeled through a bank or other financial institution. Richard was giving the example of Centenary, instead of through local government. This not only ensures sustainability, but it allows a farmer to start a long-term relationship with a private financial institution that can extend way past a project. And finally, youth awards. Youth awards can be done very cheaply, since recognition and networking are the key benefits. You know, even the financial prizes, the money was emphasized to us by the winners, that the money was not important. It was the recognition and networking that were the key benefits. And these kinds of awards, we only found one example in the two countries, but we felt that these could be done effectively at different levels, at local level, at higher level, and can be done very cheaply also, and are very important for increasing recognition, and also in the general population of showing people that agriculture can become a career. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Steve. Now, our participants, this is time for Q&A. We've listened to the presentations, we've listened to the methodology, we've received some good background on the findings and the recommendations. So we now invite questions. We'll kindly ask our participants to raise up their hands. We'll give you a chance to ask a question. And maybe before, as we wait for the participants to actually activate their mics and raise up their hands, there are some questions which are posted to the chat box. Maybe we could ask Richard and Steve to respond. I don't know who is the most appropriate respondent. There are some questions. The first one is from Derek. And Derek Ikanem is asking, what is the role of digital technology in terms of linking youth to agricultural extension services directly to markets without middlemen? What is the role of digital technology in terms of linking youth in agricultural extension services directly to markets without the middleman? Steve or Richard, whoever feels good to go. Meanwhile, our participants, kindly raise your hands. We'll give you a chance to ask a direct question to the participants.
Yeah,
hello,
I can say something
thanks,
about
Derek.
Go on,
Okay.
Go on, Richard.
No, go ahead, Steve. I'll follow up.
Okay. Okay. I just want to say there's many roles that digital tools can use, and that we found. One is two that I just brought up were call centers and videos. That is, videos, village agents, especially the lesser, the agents with less training, can show videos that can be very useful for helping farmers understand the particular practices. And call centers, and included in the call centers, one of the call centers that we looked at was SMS. People can send SMS messages and get replies, or if they have or they can call and also get replies. We also found that was really exciting was tools that are used for ordering inputs and for arranging sales of outputs, getting market information, a whole range of things. Mapping the farm to find out how much inputs you need for that particular area that you want under a particular crop, and also how much produce you can expect. And these types of information that are available through the digital tools, serve a lot of purposes. They help the banks make decisions about getting credit, for example. Richard, do you have anything to add there?
Richard?
Sorry, I was saying that no, I think The only small thing I can add is that he talked about whether technology is useful to linking youth to markets without demand. And I would say yes. Of course, the service provider who sends the village agent who has a technology, that would be a phone, that service provider is ready to provide the inputs and usually the market for the output. So yes, the middleman is often edged out.
Okay, thank you. Again, I wish to repeat that this is an opportunity to ask questions. So our participants, if you have a question, kindly raise up your hand. We'll give you a chance. There's another question here from Dr. Kiran Kokate, who is asking, in this pandemic situation, how are youth supported from seed and other critical inputs to harvesting and marketing to get remunerative price for their farm produce? Dr. Kiran, all the way from India. Again, is it Steve or Richard? How can they be supported? How can the youth be supported?
Is it about, or can I say something now? Yes. I think he's actually asking about what is going on presently, how the youth are being supported from seed and other inputs. I must say that like in Uganda, there are several efforts that are reaching out to farmers, including the youth. For example, in our presentation, we talk about Emo Mlimisa, Famnera, Acorion. All of these are tech companies that have arranged seed and inputs for farmers. And so their efforts are actually continuing now. And there is a lot more work to do, especially with the provision of technology, to reach out to the youth, even marketing, sales marketing on social media. And so arrangements are there, but maybe your point could be, are the prices friendly to the youth? I don't have an answer for that. What I would say is that the youth might have some capital to invest, and there is someone willing to give them a service. At the same time, in this service, financing can be arranged, provision for markets can be arranged so that you don't have to suffer with a lot of other costs. As long as you're willing to farm, someone's ready to give you inputs and to buy your produce. So I think that becomes friendly for the youth even during the pandemic. Without downplaying the fact that markets have been a bit of a challenge, but the programs are still running for the most part. Thank you.
Let me, thanks, Richard. Let me comment on a second question that Dr. Kokote asked in the chat, and that was issues of youth to get engaged in agriculture, whether profit is an important incentive. And I just wanted to say that yes, profit is an important incentive, but it's not the only one. And I just wanted to give some examples. One was from the youth awards. We learned about the incentive of networking and status are also important incentives for youth. And whereas long-term profit is often said not to be so important for youth, that they're more important in short-term profit, we saw examples of youth as village agents becoming, within even a year or two of becoming a village agent, they would become an input supplier. And this provided a lot of incentive for other youths who are becoming village agents. Talked about this, that as an incentive for them to get involved as a village agent, that other youths were graduating from being a village agent to become an input supplier. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Maybe before we go to Merikamau, there's some clarification from Netlin Bernard, who is asking that from your presentation, youth-led based extension providers are presented as high on both sustainability and scalability. Yet it seems from the examples that these activities are highly dependent on grants. Can you clarify or explain further?
Steve, you want to
youth-led extension. Oh,
you can.
Yeah, the youth-led extension. are sustainable. It isn't grants that they were dependent on. It was contracts. They were contracts with different agencies, sometimes government, sometimes donor agencies, and we were judging those as being an example of sustainability. There were also some that had contracts with large farmers.
Okay, thank you very much. You can go to Mary Kamau. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is to share the experience I've seen during the COVID, the pandemic time. You find there is a lot of youth who is coming to market produce, especially in the cities. And you'll find that some of them, those who have been laid off in their jobs, they are using their cars and even getting produce from the farms and coming to sell in the cities like in Nairobi. And some of them actually are engaging their customers online. And I guess this is some of the things, even if the COVID or the pandemic goes away, we should be able to encourage them, because you find they are supplying the foods to the people who are restricted in movement. And I think this is some of the initiatives that should not go even with the end of the pandemic, because we find that they are entering the value chain in a marketing, as a marketing agent and entrepreneurs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary. I think we'll break there for questions for now. We still have another opportunity for questions after the panel discussion. And now I want to hand over to my co-facilitator, Bob. My name is George Jamu. Bob will see us through the rest of this webinar. Thank you very much. Bob?
Yeah, thank you very much, George, for moderating the program. First part, I now take you through the second part, which is actually going to be a panel discussion from a series of panelists. But first, we have a short video to watch. Let me just share that.
Can't hear the sound.
We can't hear the sound.
Hello, technical team. Kindly the sound.
Sylvia, can you unmute?
Can you hear it now?
Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
hear. Maybe you restart the video. Okay.
Farmers actually, and then from there produce reports. And then from what I produce it, go back with the figures from my managers to see. I always wanted to contribute to the community. and I thought I needed some more skills and like more knowledge to understand how we go about that. I chose going to Wonderful Fund because I was working with farmers in my shop, and then there I was working with the innovation department. This is where products and services that are taken to the farmers are developed from the concept to the trials on the field and then to the farmers. So going through that chain made me learn out. Again, I was doing this, being guided by great managers at Wonderful Fund. These guys who challenge to think creatively, to go deep in understanding things. And then with this, from there, I get what it takes to start something and offer something to people. How to know how people operate. Like, I could do desk research, go interview people, farmers actually, and then from there, produce reports. And then from what I produce it, go back with the feedback from my managers to see how the farmers will get the service will be given to them. So this knowledge and skills I had learned made me ready to go and develop something I can give to farmers. And then I trust myself that I can do this. So from Wonderful Fund, I started my business. This is Expanders in agro business. With the knowledge and skills and the management I learned from my managers, I could hire other people to work for me, to work with me, to deliver with me the services to the client, to the farmers. Having been to Wonderful Fund for internship really is one of the major players that empowered me and the way the drive was at something as it is now Expanders. Before I went to Wonderful Fund, I was this person, this young man who felt like himself maybe. This is started when I was a student. But I knew I had some skills and knowledge, and I believe that for me to be able to somehow I need those skills and those knowledge. So because I was serving farmers, I chose to go with Wonderful Fund. Wonderful Fund is being an NGO that is working with smallholder farmers mainly. So I was affected to the innovation department, where products and services that are taken to farmers are developed from the concept, the idea, to the trials. Because this is where even trials, like the guidance for the trials are designed, and then to the farmers. So I made part of that. So I was also happy, honest with, and being faithful with the managers I met here at Wonderful Fund, because they played a major role, like into empowering me. So I would carry on this research from ideas, and then go and interview farmers. And then from the feedback of farmers, I come and sit with my managers. My managers challenge me into I ask the questions and why I think they gave me the answers the way they are. If we can go and then go back, interview farmers, and then come back and develop something that I think is friendly, it's familiar, it's something that farmers will appreciate. And then go back with them again and see if it's really what I think and what they want. And then I'll come back when I am on this. This is what the farmers need. Because we have to produce something that farmers need being fine. So at the end of the country, having also implemented some products and some given to farmers from my recommendations, I was determined to say that I have to start something. I tried my best and tried starting with what I had, and then but also to see if I can get funds. Because I see my ideas and convince people to support us. So by this time, I am also hiring people. By now, we have one intern working on one of projects we are implementing in Rwanda, and using some funds we got from university knowledge I get from one of the funds. I have been to one of the funds because it was something I didn't be someone who is bringing an impact, however small, the community. But I was thinking that I needed to upgrade my skills and knowledge. And then I thought of where that I applied for an action at whatever fund. This is an organization to work for the farmers because I was also serving farmers. Going back, I started founded expanders, which is working now to give some products and service to farmers, and then help them extension to see that these farmers compare to what they were earning before I got in. Being an intern, and the way it started was not the way I am now. So I believe that having interns coming, learning what I'm doing, and then see if the interest match what I'm doing was great. That's why I also start getting and see if they get interested and stay with me. And luckily enough, yes, they with me. I think they gave him a contract because he passed us things, and he's working on a project that is expanding rapidly, and he needs to be managing other people. So we wanted to give someone who can manage people, who understands what is required to say that the work is done. So we see that he's really understanding what the takes, and he can convey this to the next people who are joining us. We are hiring him this month. Looking at how the trend is, agriculture is starting to be a core thing through young people, because more young people are getting involved into agriculture, and by the way, they're the ones to be engaged in farming. So I see them active, they're interested, they're really out. Because agriculture is also challenging as other activities might be. We think of business, we need to make money. We need to make impact into the lives of people we are serving. We need to solve a problem. So they need to be having research skills, have an ability to do research, to understand what they are trying to do. What is the product or the services? Who needs that? And what does it take to deliver that service? Also, another thing is management, because if you want to start a business, you have to have in mind that you want to manage people. So you need to learn how to manage these people. Try to update yourself about like emotional management, emotional skills, like know how to deal with people. Because when you mentioned when it's young people, you really need to be at your best to manage them. Otherwise, you end up like losing them, and yet they are right working with them. So they should know that sometimes when you are young, all the time might consider, like say you are young, so you need to learn how to work together. Not only crops or livestock or any other, maybe processing, they don't know how to work. I'm the type of person who enjoys reading. I read so much.
Yes. Yeah, welcome from that video. Sorry that it was breaking, but I think we can share the link afterwards and you can follow it. The interesting thing is that Innocent was an intern, and it turned around and started recruiting interns, which is a very interesting story. And because youth are using technology as one of the ways of reaching out to farmers, we felt that it's important to, yes, have video. But again, I am Bobby Ogwang. I'll be moderating the last part of the session. And in this last part, as I've projected, I hope you're all able to see it. We are going to be having panel discussions from 6 panelists lined up. And in the interest of time, I would already want to move straight to our first panelist. So we have Violet Nyando, who is an agricultural rural innovation expert. She's the lead technical consultant at Greenbees Advisory Services Limited, Kenya. And she has a wealth of experience in advisory services, not only in Kenya, but in the wider East African region. Violet will be responding to 2 questions, and I would really want to ask the questions, and she will respond to them at once. So the first question, as you can see there, is what are the policy gaps that hinder effective youth participation in agricultural advisory and extension services? And question 2, how has the pluralistic agricultural advisory and extension services across East Africa affected youth participation in extension services? And what are the existing opportunities and challenges? Violet, you're welcome. Would want to keep track of our time. Please, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Bobby Ogwang, for this opportunity and the rest of the participants in this meeting. Bobby, can you confirm that you can hear me well?
Yes, clear.
I want to assume then you are a representative of all the attendees in this particular meeting. If it was an in-person meeting, this is the point where you tell people stand up and stretch so that we can move into the next session. But because I can't see them, I want to trust that wherever they are stretching as we continue with this discussion on gainful participation of youth in agricultural extension and advisory services provision. So my questions are 2. So what are the policy gaps that have derailed youth participation in extension service delivery? And how has the pluralistic extension services across East Africa affected the youth participation in extension services? First and foremost, as you've heard, my name is Violet Nyando. I am from Kenya. And I want to start this discussion from an appreciative point of view. When we talk about policy, when we talk about youth engagement, a lot has been happening. Indeed, we are in a better place than we were 20 years ago. In fact, we are in a better place than we were last week because we can actually see progress in terms of engaging the youth when it comes to agricultural extension and agricultural advisory service provision. So straight to my questions. Now, when it comes to youth engagement or any other development initiative in any country across the world, policies are there to provide guidance, they're there to provide direction in terms of where investment should go, and basically just guide the process. So when I look at the policy gaps, first and foremost, I want to say this. Youth have contributed in agricultural and rural development in the areas of agribusiness. But what I can say is a gap in terms of their participation in extension is we do not have adequate documentation as evidence on what their contribution has been with regard to agriculture development, rural development, and even in the agribusiness arena. Now, there's need to have a deliberate and structured way of documenting evidence. Of course, they are doing a lot, but we don't seem to communicate a lot of what, and even put monetary value in terms of what they have contributed towards agricultural extension. So inadequate documentation and providing evidence of their contribution is a gap that I see in the policy. Number 2, there's inadequate structured knowledge management and sharing frameworks. Again, this one touches on point number 1 because we are looking at the entire knowledge management landscape from collecting, organizing, packaging and disseminating this information of what the youth are doing in agribusiness arena. And a lot of information is actually with the youth, and we have pockets of successes that are not really communicated out there. And the few that get to be communicated, and I'm looking at especially the media, when you listen to stories about what the youth are doing from the media, most of them you will hear a lot of the what. And what is missing is the how. And that is where the lessons are. That's where the details are. So you'll find a youth who will tell you that I started with 1 acre and right now I'm a billionaire. So another youth who is listening, they want to be a billionaire in an instant. What we are missing in that communication is the how, because it might have taken that particular youth 2, 3, 5 years to reach where they are. But because that message is not in what is being communicated, we end up missing the how. And those who get attracted to this particular message, when they try it out, when they fail, they don't want to go back to it because they didn't get the full information. So again, that is an area I believe has a gap. Now, number 3, we also have to do deliberate training towards directing the youth into agriculture. We don't want them to look at it as an alternative when you are not able to get a better option in life. We have to really customize our training and direct it towards leading the youth into picking up agribusiness as one of a career path that is profitable, and therefore we will attract them towards, agriculture and rural development. And therefore, this will now tie a lot on customized capacity enhancement, because again, from the presentation, we have seen that the youth are not homogeneous, they're heterogeneous, and therefore they need customized capacity enhancement so that we are able to guide them into participating. Then there is also institutional support towards youth activities. Now, in many instances, and you'll agree with me, though we have made some progress towards supporting the youth, but you'll agree with me, when you attend conferences, when you attend seminars, you will find that youth are treated as a cross-cutting issue in most of the conferences and in most of the engagements. Youth are not cross-cutting issues. We don't want them to be part of a breakaway session. Can they form the main agenda? Because we are looking at the youth as partners. They're not beneficiaries. Youth are leaders. We don't want to treat them as beneficiaries, and therefore amalgamating the youth issues as a by the way or as an AOB, let's say in a big event, then does not bring out really the youth participation in agricultural extension. And then in one of the presentations, they also talked about providing supportive infrastructure, which is also affordable. Things like power, things like connectivity to the internet, things like technologies, transport infrastructure, where the youth are. Not all the youth will get an opportunity to be in the urban areas, but they can be facilitated to be better and grow in agribusinesses from where they are. So again, there's inadequate supportive infrastructure, which is also not affordable, especially when we consider that most of our youth are in the rural areas. So we need to see hubs in the rural areas, or at the county level, if we have to take the Kenyan example, where youth activities will revolve or will be attached so that they get linkage to outlet markets and also these other supportive services that they need. And then another policy issue is with regard to access to productive resources. Again, we are still having challenges with youth accessing land. We also have challenges with youth being supported in collective action, and that can be a productive resource when it comes to social capital to support the youth activities, and also to just make them, be in the forefront in terms of supporting agricultural extension. So again, I see that one as a policy gap in terms of how do we ensure that the policy provide access to productive resources that the youth require. And then last but not least, we need massive political action. Having a policy on youth, having a policy on agribusiness is not enough. It is in the implementation of that particular policy. And when I talk about massive political action, I'm really being deliberate, because then there's need to invest in youth programs and youth projects. Now, I want to bring out this point clearly here. When it comes to political, massive political action, I know when we have a program, either at the national or county level, we may use the Kenyan context, or when we have our development partners coming up with programs targeting the youths, you will find that most of the time they will go for organized groups of the youth. What about those ones that are not organized? My grandmother used to like saying this: if you are a parent and you only take care of your children and you say my neighbor's children are not worth my effort, you do not know when your son will walk into that particular village or that particular family and marry from there. So when we work with only organized youth groups, what happens to those which are not organized, or the ones which we think that are informal? I know it is easy to, to have interventions and programs working with organized groups, but we need to have a holistic approach that will also involve the youth who are not organized, because these are the same people who will also pose a challenge to the few who are already engaged into programs. Because what has happened then, it has caused structural discrimination against the ones who are not organized in groups, because every time there's a program, a project, you will find that they will only target those ones who are in organized groups. So can we have a policy that will encourage all the youth to be organized in such a way that we are reaching to the majority of the youth whom we are working with? And this will help in the process of ensuring that majority of the youth are reached out in terms of development. Now, when it comes to my second question on the role of how pluralistic extension services across East Africa have affected the youth participation in extension, this question I have two answers. When it comes to opportunities, what pluralistic extension service has done is that it has opened up the space, and therefore the youth have a space and they have an opportunity to shine, either individually as agripreneurs. They can shine collectively as a group. They can also shine through partnership, working in programs, in projects, and with other partners in the agribusiness space. So there are immense opportunities because now the field is open for youth participation. Now, when it comes to challenges, now, what the youth need to know and what we need to know as we support the youth programs is that we have big brothers in this particular space, and definitely they will face challenges. Now, the challenges will come in terms of their muscles, either financially or when it comes to technical skills. So how do we make sure that the big brothers do not swallow the youth who are now providing agricultural extension and advisory services? Because here we are looking at quality assurance, and then we want to handhold the youth so that it is easy for them to be in the forefront when it comes to being appreciated as partners in providing agricultural extension and advisory services. What I've seen in some instances is that when the youth become, when they are connected to the main, what I would call the main market system, you'll find that the big brothers will try to swallow them. Now, when they swallow them, what we see out there is this big brother being seen. I'll use the big brother like the Ministry of Agriculture. But you see, when you swallow the youth within the Ministry of Agriculture, then it becomes very difficult for us to monetize their contribution towards providing agricultural and extension services. So we have to be very deliberate and collect evidence without swallowing them into the big picture of those who are providing agricultural extension and advisory services, and come up with what the youth have contributed towards this. So I think, Bobby, I want to stop there. If there'll be any questions directed to me, I'll be glad to respond to them. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Violet. For sure, yes, there will be questions after all your colleagues have presented. Thank you for the detailed sharing of the information on your questions. Next is Frank Chiwanuka. Frank is a practicing youth in agricultural advisory services, and is a graduate of the Dallas Agricultural College who majored in agribusiness production and management. And Frank is working with Marula Creative Consultancy as the coffee advisory field officer. Frank, you have 2 questions, and having worked with you, I imagine that you're going to really respect time because we are also running a bit late. So your first question is, as a youth in extension, how well do you feel you were prepared to offer extension services? And what would be your recommendations to institutions training on agricultural extension to better equip the extension trainees for the job market? Question number 2 is, what major challenges have you been facing in extension service provision as a youth compared to other extension service providers? Like I mentioned, we're running out of time, and I imagine that people have other schedules after this, so please keep to your time. I would actually recommend like even 4 minutes. Thank you, Frank, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. So to go straight to my questions, as a youth, how well do I feel I was prepared to offer extension services? First of all, before giving out services to farmers, my company gave me a series of trainings. They took me for a 6-month internship, and where I learned a lot and where I gained a lot. I became informed, and even I added on to what I had achieved from the university. So the training prepared me a lot. Then after that, I had fellowships, I had exhibitions. This exhibition also empowered me a lot to learn the new technology, to get more informed, so that when I'm in the field, I can convince the farmer, I can put a difference. So that one, I was really so prepared to do so. Then the recommendation to the institutions, they are the same. Then I would like to recommend these institutions, if they can, at least get partnership where after the studies, they can at least send the students or the trainees to get internship from. Well, this can help these internship, the trainees to get more knowledge as far as our culture is concerned. For example, when I was about to go to the field, my company took me to a 6-month internship. But if I had not gone for an internship, at least it would have been different, and I was missing something bigger and bigger. So I recommend, if they can, at least partnership with these people, with these NGOs or any other companies, so that they can create a room for these trainees to go for internship. Then it can be fine. Then another recommendation is the institutions, they can organize fellowships where these trainees gather, where they can come and learn new technologies from each other, from big companies and from the stakeholders in agriculture. Then this will empower the trainees. I will equip the trainees to become good service providers. Then another thing, what I would recommend is this, like with the youth in the training, the way they are training us, it should change. The way they are training these trainees, we should learn that agriculture is one of the business. But for within our country, like Uganda, the way they are training this, the trainees, the way they are training the youth, it's like agriculture is not a business. You find most of the youth are just doing agriculture as a last resort. They're doing agriculture because they have failed in other businesses. But in case they are training these farmers, they are training this youth in a way that agriculture is a business. They can do agriculture like any other business. They can achieve more in agriculture. I think this can prepare this youth in a position where they can, at least they can treasure agriculture. In case they're in the field, they train according to what they were trained. They put much emphasis, they put much effort. because they know this is a business. What they're doing is a business, not just a by the way. So I think even the training techniques should change, because you find most of the youth, they are away from agriculture. They are learning away from the agriculture. So the way they are trained should change. Those are my recommendations. Then the challenges I've faced.
Summarize that.
Okay, yeah, the challenges I've faced. There are a lot of challenges, but one is just in the beginning, there is disrespect from the farmers, because formerly the farmers, they're used to aged, I can call it aged service providers. But when they see your youth, they don't expect experience from you. So you get a lot of resistance from the farmers. But later, if you're informed, you can convince them. But I got that challenge to convince the farmers, and that you can give something, you can change, you know something, because they're used to aged service providers. Then the next challenge is in Uganda, there's a tendency for giving out allowances to these farmers whenever they gather, by the government or by the other institutions. So whenever the farmer, or whenever you call for a meeting or for a training, when the farmer gathers, they expect something from you. But once you don't give something like allowances, then the next training, they will not come. Or you get resistance, or you get a hard time to call them together. So that's it has been a challenge to me as a youth, because I don't give out allowances. So the allowances in Uganda, it's really a big challenge to we the youth, and in as far as extension services are concerned, because it has been the act by the government to give out allowances whenever they call the farmers together, whenever they are going to train the farmers. So they give out food, or transport, and other allowances. So which is not the case with me, the youth, because me, I bring them because I'm giving what I know. I'm giving the knowledge. I'm assisting them. So I don't give out allowances. So at the end, there is a bigger challenge. Then the accessibility to these farmers. Most of the farmers are really far from each other. It's like, it's not every time that we, the youth, we're going to correct these farmers to train them together, because after a group training, you need to follow up. You need to go to farm from individual farms, farm to farm. So you find it's really hard to access them. Some of the areas are not accessible, so you need to foot, you need to what. So it's really a bigger challenge. We, the youth, it's really a bigger challenge. And the last challenge is that farmer, whenever you're training, so the farmer, they are demanding for personal or individual demonstration. Farmers ask, where is your guidance? For you, you're saying this, and it's because you're known. For you, you can't do it. How do you expect us to do it? So it's a challenge. Yeah, and you can't put a demonstration wherever you go, wherever you are, in every place. So like wherever Uganda, you can't put demonstration as a person all over Uganda. So it's a bigger challenge, because this is a tendency with the Ugandans to ask to first see what you've done, then after they act. And it's really a challenge to we, the youth. So thanks, Bobby. Unless there is any question, I will respond.
Yeah, thank you, Frank. The questions will come afterwards. Thank you for sharing with us. Frank is a very young person, 26 years old, and doing great work. Next, we move to Raphael. Raphael is senior agronomist, especially focusing on digitization for young generation, which is very nice field. He's also a senior technical person in agriculture and climate smart agriculture strategy with the Ministry of Agriculture in Rwanda. He was also the local expert for the study, which was conducted there, and as well, former Director General of Planning and Policy under the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources in Rwanda. Raphael will discuss with us lessons that we can draw from the study and from Rwanda experience regarding youth participation in extension. That's actually question one. And question two is, what actions do you recommend to ensure that these lessons are implemented to improve youth participation in service delivery? Raphael, like others, you have 5 minutes and you're welcome.
Thank you, moderator. I'm Raphael Rangwa. I'm senior agronomist working within the country, Rwanda. And I had that privilege to work with DLEC team in this study. And I'll go straight to the lesson drawn as the first question asked. And looking at the different models that were discussed before, listed before by Richard and Stephen, you could see that there is a very rich and diversified set of extension models in Rwanda. But all those were driven really by the job creation mindset for our young people who had been struggling to be on job since a long time. And you could see that this is really one of the driver of the diversity and richness of different models that were presented. They were around 7, and both were really encouraging and good lessons that the young people are giving to all of us. And in agriculture, especially rural development, you could see that they are very, very present, and most of them, even with few resources, but they still work doing wonderful job in agriculture extension. What another lesson we've seen from the study is due to financial capacity, there is a low capacity to scale. That means, yes, they are there, they are willing to do, but the capacity is limited because the resources are not sufficient. Another lesson that we've seen from the field activities is the lack, or not really lack, but a knowledge capacity, a knowledge management capacity of what is existing. This will be also discussed when I'm going to do some recommendations, that some actions to recommend for the future in implementing, and there is really something that should be drawn from the knowledge capacity. That includes some evidence-based tools that are missing. It was very well highlighted that we don't have previous studies on impact assessments, and these missing activities are not giving us the opportunity to know exactly what would be the planning, the next level of planning for the future activities. But this study is really very welcomed for the ministry in charge of extension, I mean, Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources in Rwanda. I'm just going to some actions that I have listed that really for someone who is looking careful for the drivers for sustainability of this extension in youth agriculture. There is a strong support of the public institutions, including the Ministry of Agriculture and Animal Resources, and the Rwanda Agriculture Board, and the National Agriculture Export Development Board. in charge of exports. And that strong support should be continuing, and I hope that going through the study that will be shared with all public and private institutions, this action to make sure that for being sustainable, we should now recommend strong support to the youth in agriculture by providing intensive capacity building programs for youth. That includes using digital tools, ICT, to reach as much as possible many farmers, both substantial agriculturists and commercial farmers that are remote if we compare with where the technology is concentrated in capital city of Kigali. Another action that is recommended to make that capacity being really implemented, there is a lack of financial services and the support to access to finance for these young business man is one action that could be really helping and scaling the actions, the few actions we have seen on the field. This actually is also an incentive for the extension work where the government of Rwanda is also incentivizing through subsidy programs that are given not only for inputs, but for also the services that are given to smallholder farmers. We have discovered that, yes, in Rwanda we had a good internship programs, but sometimes people will look it as a capacity gap and also a job, an employment for the job for the young people. So the timing for the internship should be really regulated, as RDB has already started in 2013. But action to recommend here is to scale also the internship program not only to public institutions, but also to private sector, including small businesses, not only big private sector actors, but also small, that could cater for one intern instead of 10 or 50, like the Holland Green Tech that was said. Another action that...
yes, please summarize. We're getting off. Yes, please.
Yes, just a few seconds. It's really to change the mindset of all actors in the country to make them really conducting impact assessment for evidence-based planning, especially for extension. And looking forward, I think First Rwanda, whom I've been part and I've been discussing this, would be really some that institution that will really incentivize the Ministry of Agriculture, the Rwanda Agriculture Board, to conduct impact assessment before the planning exercise. Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael, and thank you for keeping it short, but without missing the key point. Thank you again. Yes, we welcome Nicholas, who is also from Rwanda and who has also worked on the DLEC study and who is currently a master's student in Switzerland. So Nicholas, you will discuss with us, in your opinion, and from the study results, what are the features of extension model that ensure youth are sustainably and effectively engaged in extension and advisory service provision? And question 2 is, what opportunities are there for young people wishing to venture into extension service provision? Nicholas, I kindly request that you use, I would say 1 minute because we're 1 minute away, but please use 3 minutes. You're welcome.
Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. It's good to appreciate the fact that a DLEC team has also engaged youth in the study, both as respondents, but also as a part of the technical team. So I was fortunate to be part of the team with Steve, Richard, and the rest of the team. And thank you so much for presenting area results. So I will be brief. And one of the critical questions that we are trying to address here is the sustainability. And as from the previous study that IFPRI also has worked on, it's very critical to realize that the best fit framework for extension advisory services is very difficult to assess from the current results and say this is a more sustainable extension model, because there are so many factors to consider. However, I think that from the presentations already, that programs employing university graduates were proven to have high rank, and since they provide employment to the youth, and these are including fee-based extension providers and internship. And it was also clear that youth are highly engaged in the fee-based extension companies and village agents models, which one could easily say that they are sustainable and effective extension service provision model. One last example that I could point here is the models that are training youth to become agripreneurs, and examples from what has been presented earlier, like the agribusiness incubation models that Rwanda Youth in Agribusiness Forum was engaged in. Like earlier on, we presented in our AgriLink block some examples of the youth that are already becoming sustainable in terms of getting contracts. On the second question, the opportunities are so many for the youth that want to venture into extension advisory service provision. I would like to categorize this into three. And the first one is an opportunity for growth and learning. We have to appreciate the fact that there is vast knowledge and information in extension advisory services, both from seminars such as this one and also from other sources, universities, like the study was found out that there is a department in agriculture extension at Makerere University, which a lot of youth in the region can benefit from. Secondly, is an opportunity for making profit from solving problems that a number of youth that are business oriented and market oriented could take opportunities such as those posed by the current challenges that that agriculture as a whole is facing as a result of a number of challenges, and try to bring about solution and have a fee base on it. So the last one is an opportunity for youth also getting engaged in policy formulation and also implementation. We've realized that in some countries, of course in East Africa and Rwanda and Uganda included, that there can be good policies, and the youth, they are the largest majority of the population that can also help drive out the implementation. So it's an opportunity to raise the potential of those available policies, but also contribute wherever there could be some changes for the future of the next generation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas, for emphasizing some of the key points here, especially those that came out also during the presentation by Dr. Miro and Stephen. Yes, and we go now to Maurice, who is also the final panelist, and after that we go for the Q&A briefly. So because I'm projecting and I'm imagining that you're all reading his biodata, I would go straight to his questions. And Maurice, you will discuss with us the question on what should agricultural advisory training focus on to develop appropriate and relevant competencies to equip graduates to effectively provide agricultural advisory services and attract them to take up private extension and advisory services. You're welcome.
Thank you, Bobby. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, clearly.
Thank you so much for the panelists, the presenters, and glad to have this opportunity to share. In the interest of time, I'll be very quick. When you look at agriculture extension advisory services, and as institutions, we need to look at the kinds of competencies that we are interested in. One would want to look at graduates who can critically think, graduates who can innovate, graduates who can be able to enterprise in the areas they are in, graduates who are also self-driven, graduates who are able to lead others in the workplace and communicate effectively and efficiently, appreciate diversity, as well as graduates who are able to be sensitive to the environment in which we work, and agriculture and environment are one and the same thing. And so they need to be able to appreciate that. They should be able to work ethically, and they should be able to also be mindful of the health and safety in the workplace. So in terms of developing these competencies, then our institutions really need to be able to develop their courses and training around those competencies to be able to effectively participate. And I also engage the private sector in the extension service as well. So it is important that our institutions work around giving experiential learning to our students. We emphasize experiential learning so that they can be able to really pick up some of these competencies. We need to be able to promote cooperative learning in our programs for extension so that the students can learn to work with each other and work with the communities. We need to be able to also enrich the training environment. When you look at our institutions, a lot of the institutions giving this kind of training, we lack a lot of these resources to be able to really provide the practical skills and competencies that will enable them to work effectively or gain the necessary skills. I also want to emphasize the fact that we need to be able to provide networks and partnerships, deliberately go out and seek private sector participation in the training to be able to engage. And some of the presenters have really emphasized that. More private sector participation, private extension service providers participation in the training will help us. And then we also need to be very pragmatic in the way we deal with curriculum review so that it's relevant and responsive to the actual needs in extension service provision. I don't know whether that captures that adequately in the interest of time. I think that was the first question. Is there another one?
No, you actually have one question.
Okay, thank you. I think I want to leave it there in terms of advisory service training to develop appropriate relevant competencies to equip graduates. I think those are the issues that I think we need to emphasize on, and we need to just give them more practical orientation and address the issues of them being able to be good documenters, good presenters, good communicators, good researchers, reading skills. We find some of our graduates have challenges in those areas, and report writing, teamwork, ICT. I think the previous presenter mentioned that. And then I also want to just data collection and analysis. Those are gaps that we need to be able to build in. And then conflict management. I think with those, I would say we can be able to have graduates who can be able to work in our communities and deliver services effectively. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Maurice. And thank you very much all the participants, the panelists, for sharing with us the wealth of knowledge that you have. I think it's been very good for this. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, so we cannot be able to do the Q&A. And I would just like to invite Dr. Henry, who will come and give closing remarks. But maybe before Dr. Henry comes, and because we've not had a chance to respond to these questions, I know they must have been flowing in the question chat. I would think like if any member of the audience could just make a 1-minute comment, just a 1-minute comment on the panel discussion, such that Dr. Henry can then come and close the webinar. I think that would be nice.
Can I say something?
Please do.
Yeah, I think Violet made a good presentation. Thanks for that. And there is an issue in terms of policy gap that as extension service providers, we need to think about extension as advisory service. Agriculture, especially for the Kenyan situation, is a devolved function. But when you move around the country, you realize that extension service provision is really, there are quite a number of challenges. And one of the things that I have noticed is that the articulation of the extension service provision in the devolved functions to the county government is actually not captured. And to me, that explains why the funding for extension at the county levels is problematic. I think as extension professionals, we need to be able to see how best can we be able to engage so that that aspect of the legal framework is addressed. And therefore, it has implications on policy at the county levels.
Yes, thank you for that addition. And now I welcome Dr. Henry to close the webinar. And thank you everyone for participating.
Thank you all. I think I just want to request Amariet from the Ministry of Agriculture to do the closing remarks. I think for me, it's just to thank each and every one of us, and then we look forward to our next webinar next week, a date like this. Amariet, kindly make the closing remarks on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture, and then from there it will be over. And I want to say thank you each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all panelists, experts, and facilitators for this, for the valuable contributions. As a Ministry of Agriculture, we really appreciate and even suggest that those valuable contributions should be packaged and even shared to the wider stakeholder clientele, so that every stakeholder, because actually youth engagement in agriculture extension advisory services is a responsibility of each and every person. We have a role to play as a ministry, the county governments have a role to play, and even the private sector has a role to play. Let us work together and ensure that these people who always appear to be marginalized, called the young people, they are empowered and they can now take over the driving seat to drive agriculture sector to the next level. Otherwise, thank you very much. Thank you for participating, and God bless you all.
Thank you, Amariet, and then
over to you, Bobby.
Yeah, thank you everyone for participating in this webinar. And I think Dr. Henry, yes, I think, yeah, you're welcome to say the vote of thanks to everyone.
Okay, thank you again. I want to thank each and every one of you for attending, and again, look forward to hosting you again. We have the final webinar on next week, Wednesday, the day time like this, and we will communicate more details in the course of the week. Again, thank you very much for participating, and may you see you next week. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
very
very much.
everyone.